I am again going to the general embryology class, the oogenesis. We have completed the spermatogenesis, now the oogenesis. You know, the ovary is the primary sex organ in female, and the spermatozoa cycle, that's when the meiosis starts after puberty. The spermatogonia remains dormant up puberty, and puberty, the spermatogenesis starts, and it is a continuous process, always every day going on up to the last extreme old age. But the basic difference that in oogenesis, the process of oogenesis starts in fetal life and take a halt for a period. Again, in female sexual life, that is usually 15 to 44 years, we call the cyclical way the process of oogenesis going on. So there is a gross difference between the spermatogenesis and oogenesis. Like a male, the primordial or germ cell, PGC, takes its origin from epiblast. Then it resides on the wall of the yolk sac, and then it migrates to the wall of the yolk sac, then to the dorsal mesentery of the gut. It ultimately takes reside where the future, in the genital ridge, where the future ovary will ultimately form here. So it is known as the primordial germ cell. Soon it divides mitotically and transforms into oogonia. In case of a male, it is spermatogonia. Like female, it is same, it becomes oogonia. So it takes shelter on primordial germ cell, ultimately divides mitotically and slightly enlarged to form oogonia. PGC, primordial germ cell, oogonia. Now the question that whether primordial germ cells occupy whole of the ovary? No. Ovary histologically divides into two parts. One is called cortex, ovarian cortex, and inside we call medulla. It is the cortex, it is the medulla. Primordial germ cell and ultimately oogonia comes to reside on the cortex only, not in the medulla. That's very important. So when it occurs before birth, just the fetus embryo is going to mature. At about 10th weeks of fetal life, it becomes more or less all of the primordial germ cells transform into oogonia. I have already told you, suppose this is the cortex, this is the oogonia, right? This is the oogonia, and there is a surrounding tissue containing cells. We call the surrounding cells. This oogonia at 10 weeks, then it starts, again enlarges and transform into, from 10 weeks onwards, primary oocyte. Primary oocyte. Where it occurs? In the fetal period, in the ovarian cortex, in the fetal period, starting from 10 weeks of fetal life. So, more or less all of the oogonia going to transform into primary oocyte. What is chromosome number? 46. Now, at that time onwards, from 10 weeks onwards, suppose this is the primary oocyte. Primary oocyte. This is the nucleus, cytoplasm containing mitochondria and others. This is the membrane, cytoplasmic membrane. The surrounding tissue cells become epithelial flat cells, surround the primary oocyte, give a covering. These are flat cells developed from the ovarian stroma and surrounds the ovary and makes a globular structure. It is a cut section. When a three-dimensional, it becomes like a grapes. We call it follicle. Any grape-like structure, round structure, we call follicle. So, we call it primordial follicle. Now onwards, two things will happen simultaneously. One is development of the primary oocyte to secondary oocyte and as well as the development of the follicle. So, we call it primordial follicle and the oocyte is primary oocyte. Chromosome number 46 and the whole structure we call primordial follicle. And at this period onwards, the primary oocyte in the fetal period, when the fetus starts its haploid division, that's when meiosis. I have already told you meiosis has got two parts. Meiosis I, where the chromosome number gets half, and meiosis II is nothing but like the mitosis. So, the half number remain half. So, primary oocyte, primordial follicle, primary oocyte now starts its meiosis. Meiosis I. Meiosis I, but there is a big but. What is the but? It does not complete its meiosis I during the fetal period, even during the childhood period. The meiosis gets arrested. Meiosis get arrested in the prophase of the meiosis I. Diploid, and the long arrest stage is known as the diploid stage or dictotine stage. So, it starts meiosis I. Meiosis I has got a prophase, metaphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase and telophase. But in the prophase, it gets arrested and remain as such. So, chromosome number is not still half. It gets arrested and fetus, ultimately the baby gives birth, taken birth. So, not only that, the two things from the 7th month onwards, millions of primordial follicles, 7 million, both the ovaries are present, millions. But from 7th month of intrauterine life onwards, the destruction also going on. Not all the primordial follicle will survive. So at birth, only 6 lakh to 8 lakh primordial follicle with primary oocyte inside are present at birth. Primary oocyte is arrested in meiosis I. In the prophase, right? Ultimately, the child is growing and the destruction is going on. Ultimately, the child attains the puberty, and only 40,000 in both the ovaries of primordial follicle is present with primary oocyte. 40,000. Now, in the baby attains maturity, puberty, and now by genetic and by hormonal influences, by receptor stimulation, one ovary, there are one ovary gets stimulated, and about 16 to 20 primordial follicles now are ordered by their gene that you go on developing. Not all the 40,000 population, some are selected, few are selected, not some, few are selected, and they try to complete their oogenesis, but ultimately one will succeed. So each cycle 16 to 20 primordial follicle are developed. So suppose there are 16 going to develop and oogenesis trying to complete in each menstrual cycle. Simultaneously, there are changes also occur in the uterus. So there are two cyclical changes occur in each menstruation. One occurs in the ovary, one occurs in the uterus. Uterus ta bolchi na এখন, uterus I am not telling, the ovarian cycle. So in each menstrual cycle 620 primary oocyte with the flat epithelial cells. Now the meiosis, there are certain things now happens in this cell. It is called the primordial follicle. We call it follicular cells, flat cells. Now it becomes cuboidal. Epithelium porechi, squamous cell, cuboidal cell, columnar cell. So these flat epithelial cells become cuboidal. Now we call it, and now we call primary follicle. We call it primary follicle. Primordial chilo, primary follicle. Now, these cuboidal follicular cell become multilayered. They become divides mitotically and become multilayered. Become multilayered, and now usually called not follicular cell, but we call it granulosa cells. We call it granulosa cells. So they become multilayered. এইখানে মাল্টিলেয়ার, এতগুলির মধ্যে ধরো 16টা হচ্ছে, become multi-layered, and we call now that secondary follicle, right? এটা আমি একটু বড় করে আঁকছি। Secondary follicle, multi-layered cuboidal granulosa cells. কি বলছে এটাকে? সেকেন্ডারি ফলিকল। ভেতরে কে আছে? প্রাইমারি oocyte। ক্রোমোজোম নাম্বার 46 এখনো চেঞ্জ হয়নি, স্টার্টস করেছে, বাট ইট ইজ নট হাফ। তাহলে এটা নিউক্লিয়াস, ovary, multilayer cuboidal cell. Cytoplasmic membrane, mitochondria and other structure, and there are certain lecithin like nutrient rich follicles for giving nutrition. So it is the granulosa cells, it is the primary oocyte. Arrest in the meiosis I, secondary follicle. Now, এইখানের বাদ দিয়েও কানেকটিভ টিস্যু আছে এখানে, এই যেগুলি কানেকটিভ টিস্যু কালকে বলিয়েছিলাম বা পড়েছো, কানেকটিভ টিস্যু রয়েছে ওভাতে। These connective tissue contain blood vessels etc. and fibers. They form these connective tissue again changed. অন্য কালার দিয়ে দিই তাহলে সুবিধা হবে। This is the epithelial layer, cuboidal cells. This is the connective layer. These connective tissue are again divided into two lamina. Inner lamina we call theca interna. We call theca interna containing blood vessels. Theca interna has got capacity at time it can produce hormones, which hormones are liberated in these blood vessels. So we call it theca interna. And এটাকে আমরা বলি Theca Externa. It is a fibrous tissue layer giving support to the. Now, the this ovarian cycle going on, how the days are connected. Suppose in puberty, there occur menstruation. The first day of menstruation, we call it day 1. Next day, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. So in this way, the ova is maturating and the days are going on. Suppose for 6th, 7th to 8th day, some fluid full cavity appears here in the glomerular cells. এখানে একটা ক্যাভিটি অ্যাপিয়ার করলো কিছু সেলের জায়গায়, এখানে ফ্লুইড অ্যাপিয়ার করছে containing liquid material. It contains fluid full appears, and also theca interna and theca externa appear. Now, important thing is that these inner glomerular cell and the oocyte secretes a very important glycoprotein coat. How much important one cannot ascertain, so important. এটা সেলুলার নয়, একটা গ্লাইকোপ্রোটিন কোটিং দিল, তাকে আমরা বলি দ্যাট আই কল জোনা পেলুসিডা, which contains receptor ZP1, Zona Pellucida 1, Zona Pellucida 2, Zona Pellucida receptor. Receptor I have already explained, like a lock. So it is called Zona Pellucida, and now onwards the cytoplasmic membrane of the oocyte we call vitelline membrane. We call vitelline membrane. We call vitelline membrane, and the space between the Zona Pellucida and the vitelline membrane we call perivitelline space. We call perivitelline space. It is the cytoplasmic membrane of the primary oocyte. This is the Zona Pellucida. This space is called the perivitelline space. And in the cytoplasm, lecithin-rich nutrient materials are accumulated. We call deuteoplasm. Come on. So এটাকে আমরা বলছি perivitelline space and vitelline membrane, and these fluid-full cavity appear within the glomerulosa cells. Now all the cavities become joined together except the one end, all the cavity are joined together to form a single cavity. So, except this end, the cavities are joined together to form a single cavity containing fluid. A single cavity separating the glomerular cells into two strata. One is touching the primary oocyte, we call cumulus oophoricus. Cumulus, এটাও glomerular cell, এটাও glomerular cells, কিন্তু মধ্যখানে আছে ক্যাভিটি, ফ্লুইড ফুল নিউট্রিয়েন্ট রিচ ক্যাভিটি, এটাকে বলছি cumulus oophoricus. কেমন, এটাকে আমরা বলি স্পেশালি cumulus oophoricus. What is cumulus oophoricus? Constituent is the granulosa cells, and this part where there is a no cavity we call discus proligerus. দরকার নেই আমার, cumulus oophoricus is important. গেল, and now the follicle is called tertiary follicle বা antral follicle, because this fluid full cavity is called antrum. So it is called the tertiary follicle. It is, chromosome is still 46. Oocyte is primary oocyte, but gradually the days are counting and going to about 13 days. Now, from the anterior pituitary, there occurs certain liberation of luteinizing hormone, LH, luteinizing hormone. It speaks at about 14th day, and this order, this primary oocyte to complete its first meiotic division, and primary oocyte completes it. Chromosome number is halved, and as a rule, from one primary oocyte there will be two cells, but the difference between the other meiosis or spermatogenesis, that peculiar difference, unique difference, what is that? one cell will be larger, contains more or less all the cytoplasm, and other cell only nucleus or scanty or nil cytoplasm. We call it polar body. So, chromosome number is half and two division, one remains large and other remain here small in the perivitelline space. এই জায়গাটায় সেকেন্ড দুটো ডিভিশন হলো, one becomes large and one becomes small. The small is remain in the perivitelline space, we call first polar body. And this primary oocyte, now we cannot call primary oocyte, as the chromosome number is half, we call secondary oocyte. And at about 14th day, the antral follicle is very high due to LH surge from the ova. And last but not the least, I have already told you, there are about 16 to 20 in each cycle growing to mature. Some arrest in the very initial period and gets lost. Some arrest in the secondary follicular stage, not develop further. Some arrest in the tertiary follicular stage. Pray almost reach kore gechilo touch, almost reach the touch line but cannot complete. Only one will usually only one will mature and burst open from the ovary. This is the ovary. One will mature, burst open the ovary and comes out from the ovary, lie in the abdominal cavity. We call in fetal the coelomic cavity. Then in the fetal ki bolchi, coelomic or abdominal cavity of the female, fetus not, female. Right? Only one ova will survive. So, and this matured just before ovulation, and the process we call ovulation, when the ovary bursts out from the ovary, just before ovulation. The follicle we call Graafian follicle. Sometimes in examination, it has been asked, draw a Graafian follicle. Then you have to draw this and label it. Mature Graafian follicle. The Graaf is a Danish anatomist, first discovered it. So, to pay respect to him, the follicle is called Graafian follicle. So, when ovulation occurs, secondary oocyte with chromosome number half. Again this, and it starts meiosis II. Again there is an arrest. Arrest in the metaphase of the meiosis II. আগেরটা prophase হয়েছিল, এবার metaphase গিয়ে arrest হয়েছিল. How much the arrest will continue? Up to fertilization. If the sperm can penetrate the ova, the second meiosis will complete. Otherwise, no, it will be destroyed. So, Graafian follicle ruptures and it's taken up by the fallopian tube. Just close to the ovary, there is a fallopian tube. This is the ovary. This is the uterus. This is the cervix. This is the vagina. Look, this is the uterus. Uterus has got a body and a cervix. This lower part we call cervix, and this is the vagina. And this is the fallopian tube. So, when it ruptures, this is taken up by the, a few seconds only remain in the abdominal cavity, then it is taken up by the fallopian tube, by the fimria, and also by, so it is taken up by the fallopian tube. And gradually, this ova ultimately goes to a dilated part of the fallopian tube, we call it ampulla. Fallopian tube has got a parts, isthmus, intramural part, isthmus, ampulla. So, here the ova ultimately goes and take a rest for 24 to 48 hours. So, whether sperm will come or not. কোথায় নিচ্ছে? অ্যাম্পালা অফ দ্য ফ্যালোপিয়ান টিউব। কি করে যাচ্ছে? ওভার তো কিছু হাত পা নেই। It is due to a fallopian tube. When you go to the histology, already you know the columnar epithelium, some few columnar epithelium has got cilia, finger-like projections, hair-like projection, better to say, not finger, hair-like projection. By the movements of this, or they beat always from outside inwards. So by the, suppose this is the ova, a beat the ova towards the ampulla. And also by the contraction of the smooth muscles of the fallopian tube, they ultimately from here, they goes to reside in the ampulla and wait for the sperm occurs or not. So it is a secondary oocyte, chromosome number half, arrest in the second meiosis phase. And what happens then to the here? This empty follicle, because why we call empty? Because the sperm, ova is secondary oocyte rupture, so there is a gap. And already I have told you. Now the next question is that, I am bhule gechi jeta. Only ova will go to the fallopian tube? No. Along with the ova, a layer of cumulus oophoricus, granulosa cells also goes to the ova. That's mean with the ova goes to the fallopian number 1 secondary oocyte with its vitelline membrane, perivitelline space, Zona Pellucida, and few glomerulosa cells of the cumulus oophoricus. We call it corona radiata. Now we call it corona radiata. তাহলে কে কে গেল? Only ova? No. Ova, secondary oocyte as a secondary oocyte with its vitelline membrane, perivitelline space, Zona Pellucida, and corona radiata. What is corona radiata? The few glomerulosa cells surrounding the ova of the cumulus oophoricus. এই শুদ্ধ নিয়ে গেল। So there is an, এইটা এমটি হয়ে গেল, ঘর খালি হয়ে গেল। এমটি হাউস চলে গেল, রেসিডেন্ট চলে গেছে, ঘর খালি। So blood vessels are there. So from these blood vessels, bleeding occurs. Hemorrhage occurs. Bleeding means hemorrhage, which occupies this empty space. So it is a hemorrhagic body. In Latin, the hemorrhage is called corpus. Corpus means body. So we call corpora hemorrhagica. So after 14th day, when ovulation occurs, this follicle becomes corpus hemorrhagicum. Corpus hemorrhagicum. কেন? blood vessels রয়েছে। Now changes occur in this Theca Interna and rest, এই যে আউটসাইড গ্র্যানুলোসা সেল রয়ে গেছিল, এই গ্র্যানুলোসা সেলস রয়ে গেছিল, they become changed, they become enlarged and produce some steroid hormones and become yellowish in color, right? They secrete progesterone, estrogen, etc. Come on. And the cell গুলিকে আমরা বলছি এই যে চেঞ্জ হয়ে গেল, এই সেলগুলি চেঞ্জ হয়ে গেল। Theca Interna, cells of Theca Interna gets changed. Cells of these rest granulosa cells also changed. What change? They become enlarged, containing yellowish pigments and they can secrete hormones. Come on. So, why hormone? They secrete mainly progesterone and also estrogen, so that কেন করা হচ্ছে? If pregnancy occur, uterus must be prepared, remain spongy, highly vascular, enlarged. এটাকে করার জন্য always try to become pregnant, right? So they secrete hormone, and এই যে সেলগুলি চেঞ্জ হলো, তখন সেলগুলিকে আমরা বলছি লুটিয়াল সেলস। লুটিয়াল সেলস, ইউলেশন কালার। এই সেলগুলিকে আমরা বলবো গ্র্যানুলোসা লুটিয়াল সেলস, এই যে সেলগুলিকে বলবো থিকা লুটিয়াল সেলস। They secrete hormones, mainly progesterone, so that uterus are gradually preparing for self, so that if pregnancy occur, they can receive the blastocyst. কেমন কনসেপ্টকে রিসিভ করতে পারে, তার জন্য ইউটেরাসের চেঞ্জের দরকার আছে, পরে পড়াবো। সো এটা হলো থিকা লুটিয়াল সেল, এবং তখন আমরা কর্পাস হিমারিজিকাম আর বলছি না, আমরা একে বলবো কর্পাস লুটিয়াম। কর্পাস লুটিয়াম কি বলবো? ওই লুটিয়াল সেলসের জন্য কর্পাস লুটিয়াম, ইয়েলোইশ ইন কালার, ইয়েলো স্ট্রিক্স দেখা যাবে। এর দুটো ফেট আছে, প্রেগনেন্সি মে অকার, মে নট অকার। ইফ প্রেগনেন্সি অকার, they will continue up to 3 to 4 months until placenta will take over to maintain the uterus helpful for the pregnancy. Kintu placenta will take time for about 3 to 4 months to give the human chorionic gonadotropin hormone to produce such a quantity which is ideal for maintenance of pregnancy. So up to 3 to 4 months, this corpus luteum will persist if pregnancy occur. We call it then corpus luteum of pregnancy. If fertilization does not take place, pregnancy doesn't occur, then what's happened? These become fibrosed, these become ultimately destroyed, and we call corpus luteum of menstruation. See, it occurs for up to its menstrual cycle, that's mean 21 up to 28 days, মানে extra 10 days, 14 day তে হলো আরো 10 to 15 days থাকবে, তারপরে it will become destroyed, ultimately fibrosis, whitish in color, we call corpus albicans. Even the corpus menstruation of pregnancy after 3 to 4 months again will be fibrosed and become corpus albicans. তাহলে কি হলো corpus luteum? যখন এমটি হলো corpus luteum, এই corpus hemorrhagicum. Corpus hemorrhagicum now transformed into corpus luteum. It has a two effect: corpus luteum of pregnancy, corpus luteum of menstruation. But ultimately they become, all will be ultimately fibrosed and will be replaced by fibrous tissue and become corpus albicans. So ovary যখন mature for 30 years এর দেখবে streaks of yellowish spots are there. They are nothing but the corpus albicans. Now, so oogenesis is complete. Next very stage is the fertilization. Fertilization means intercourse occurs, sexual intercourse occur, and the sperm gets deposited in the vagina of the uterus. Millions of sperm gets deposited in the vagina of the uterus, right? And now there occur secretion of prostaglandin, oxytocin. prostaglandin are present in the sperm fluid, semen. Prostaglandin is a very important chemicals required our day-to-day physiological life. So, semens contain prostaglandin, and during intercourse, the neural hypophysis gets stimulated, and they order the posterior pituitary to secrete oxytocin, right? Prostaglandin liquefies the প্রথমে semen যেটা হয় very thick থাকে, liquefies the sperm, and oxytocin orders this uterine musculature to contract rhythmically. So when it rhythmically contracts, it causes a পিস্টনের যখন টানছি আমরা কি হয়, ভ্যাকুয়াম হয়, it gets vacuum in the syringe so that the drug is getting sucked in. Just things happen when you try to draw a liquid medicine from the ampoule. We got a syringe and pull the piston up so that it creates a negative pressure, and through this negative pressure the chemical liquid will go inside the syringe, piston like negative pressure effect, and same things happen. This uterine contraction produce a negative vacuum in this, or a negative zone in this body of the uterus, and the sperm is sucked in. Sperm is sucked in and go to the body, ultimately to the through the fallopian tube go to the ampulla, where the ova gets ready to receive. Millions of sperm are injected, but only fewer gets entry into the ampulla, and ultimately one will succeed to fertilize the ova. But others not in vain, they are also required. How it requires, I will come next. Okay. Yeah. এরপরে একটা বিশাল ব্যাপার, এই যে স্পার্ম ইনজেক্টেড হলো, spermatozoa, they are able to fertilize? No. They must be primed, they must be prepared. First thing occur, known as capacitation of the form. 2-3 bar, 2 to 3 times MCQ question comes from the capacitation. What is capacitation? So this is the head, middle piece, tail, and the head contains its cytoplasmic membrane. Under the cytoplasmic membrane, inside the cytoplasmic membrane, and the nucleus. And nucleus is covered by a specialized Golgi apparatus we call acrosome. Acrosome, right? Acrosome has got its membrane. We call acrosomal membrane, red tag. So cytoplasmic membrane and acrosomal membrane are different, right? বুঝতে পেরেছো কি? And the nucleus and cytoplasm almost very few. So this is the sperm, and I have already told you, when sperm is going to the prostate, seminal vesicle, etc., these form a, there is an coatings of the glycoprotein coating. Some glycoprotein molecule attached to the cytoplasmic membrane of the sperm. When diseases are present, sperm cannot move properly, cannot penetrate properly. So, when spermatozoa is injected into the vagina, then to the uterus of the female uterus, there occur capacitation of the sperm. If this capacitation doesn't occur, sperm cannot fertilize the ovum. What is capacitation? These special glycoprotein coats are removed. These glycoprotein coats are removed. Which occurs, where it occurs? In the female uterus, not in the male thing. So capacitation only occurs when the spermatozoa is injected into the uterus. It takes about 2 to 3 or 4 hours. This capacitation, the glycoprotein coat is removed. Now the sperm is able to move properly, able to penetrate. And this is called the capacitation. Now I have already told you, now sperm reached the ampulla. This is the ampulla. This is the fallopian tube, this is the uterus, this is the ampulla. So, ova is there, this is the ova, this is the vitelline membrane, this red colored vitelline membrane, this is the nucleus, and outside the vitelline membrane there is granulosa cells, corona radiata cells. And this is the perivitelline space. এরম ভাবে রয়েছে, and sperm has come. Multiple sperm has come. Multiple sperm has come with a nucleus, ectosomal cap, etc. But there are 3 barriers to penetrate to go inside the cytoplasm of the ovarian body. Number 1 barrier is the corona radiata cells. Number 2 barrier, Zona Pellucida. And third barrier, the cytoplasm of the ova, that is the vitelline membrane. 3টে barrier কে ওকে ক্রস করতে হবে। কি কি barrier? Corona radiata cells. Number 2, Zona Pellucida. Number 3, vitelline membrane.